Hey everyone, good to see you all. Thanks for joining us for the Home Services Summit webinar series. I'm excited to have this conversation with Ben Fox, the president of ProNexis. I'm sure many of you have met him at different events, as you can tell. And as if you know Ben, you know his title is actually not brand president of ProNexis. It's Captain Fun. That's how we call Ben around here. And to illustrate how fun Ben is, you can see all the trophies behind him. But the one that he finds the most important and the one that he's the most proud of is that time he won that dancing competition
Yeah.
and he did a pirouette at some kind of event and he got the big trophy.
Yeah,
Uh,
let's set the record straight. These are not all my trophies. In fact, the dancing trophy, one of Will, who runs Home Services Summit, he brought this baby in this weekend. So
yeah,
it's in the spotlight for
yeah.
right now.
We love handing Ben our trophies for his trophy wall. Um, so my name's Scott Abbott, one of the founders of Five Star Painting and the CEO of Five Star Franchising. And I want to remind you all that we are having our very first in-person Home Service Summit event. It's happening September 20th to 22nd. Get on the website, register for the event. We already have 324 people registered to attend. It's going to be awesome. Tons of great content, all specific to home services, and great vendors that'll be present that you can learn from or hear from and network with, as well as peers in your industry and business. So look forward to seeing you there in person on the September 20th to 22nd of this year. The mission at ProNexis, which this is the first time we've had them on the show. I mean, I've referenced ProNexis a number of times because of the data that I get in my business through ProNexis has been phenomenal. But the mission at ProNexis is to transform the customer experience in the home services industry through voice, chat, text, and instant booking. And we're going to talk a little bit about how customer experience has changed over time. And Ben will be sharing with us a lot of numbers and stats around that I think would be beneficial to you all. The format in this interview, as if you've attended, I'll do about 45 minutes here with Ben. I've got some questions for him that we'll walk through. And then if any of you do have questions you want to ask, feel free at any point in time in the chat which is just down below, to signal to me or to Ben that you've got a question. I'll make sure I get to those for the last 15 minutes. And I look forward to kicking this off. So quick background on Ben. Ben is the president of ProNexis. Prior to becoming president, Ben was the vice president of sales for our company, and he doubled the business over his 3 years in that role. Really professionalized the sales effort, which was a huge relief. Did a great job in terms of leading the business, and so was promoted a couple of years ago. And he loves to play with his 4 kids. And I noticed on his bio he indicates indoor soccer now, although he's more of a football guy, I thought, until recently. In his old age, he's starting to move to easier sports, I guess. Has a bachelor degree in finance from Southern Utah University and is a local here to Utah. So let's jump in, Ben. Really am looking forward to this conversation. And I know for all of our listeners, I want you to know that we are going to be really trying to give you numbers. If you are in this business of home services, you are trying to master the customer experience for your franchisees. And what I want to do, make sure we're doing here is giving you all benchmarks, things you can kind of relate to, data points you can relate to know what you can expect or what you should be shooting for in your own business. So to kick off, Ben, what is customer experience?
Yeah, that's a great question. And first of all, thanks for having me on this awesome June 1st day. What is customer experience? So I think it's changed over time, right? The consumer and the demands that they have around how they want to interact with the brand have shifted, but it's really your storefront to the consumer and making sure that you're representing the brand, representing the locations in the way that that the consumer wants and that positions your brand the best way. So it really has to encompass all of the different ways that consumers want to communicate with the company. So that's where ProNexis is focused on those things: text, chat, calls, of course, instant booking, and it's shifting. It's becoming more and more touchless, more and more
Interesting. Yeah.
where people don't necessarily want to have to call in to talk to somebody to get on the schedule or get their needs met. It's becoming more touchless, and so that's where we focus, is trying to enable that for the home services industry.
So I'd like to spend some time on this because I think the analogy you just made there earlier is a good one. You know, the how customers interact with your home service brand is your storefront, right? So their very first impression is the moment they dial, go to your website and chat, text some number, try and schedule with you online. However, the customer's trying to engage with the brand, that very, very first experience is the storefront. And for brands that aren't in home services, so think McDonald's, Arby's, Wendy's, you name the restaurant, if you look at how much effort those brands are putting in making sure their storefront, their the exterior of their store is perfect, in harmony with brand standards. The colors, the logos, everything is perfect. The menu is exactly what it's supposed to be. You know, often they talk about it, the IFA in events, you know, making sure the washrooms are clean. Like it's like every first impression a customer would have with the brand is a reflection of the product that people are going to consume. So if that's true, then, and in fact, customer experience in home services is the very first time a homeowner calls your brand. And I want to spend some time on this. I know that ProNexis does some work in this area, and so we can talk about it. But my experience has been, and this is coming back to what got me in this business in the first place, is I called 1,000 painters in 2004, 2005 over a series of months. And I discovered that only 20% of painters answered their phones. So it'd be like walking into Wendy's and there's not a person at the till to take my order. And you can't buy the product. It's not for sale. It looks like it's for sale. It looks like they're in business when you walk up to the store, but they're not. And so I think that this piece of customer service, or customer experience and storefront, is just, frankly, it's been abysmal in the home services industry for years. I think that there's been more of attention on that in general, and there's more visibility. I want to, maybe Ben, if you wouldn't mind talking about, because ProNexis gets engaged from time to time to help brand presidents or CEOs of home service brands assess their storefront, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you do that, and what have you discovered when you've done that?
Yeah, to comment or kind of play on what you were saying, it's fascinating, as I've worked in the home services industry for a number of years now, how much time and energy is spent on the marketing, right? On the image online of what the brand looks like, the website, the ads, all of that digital space to attract leads, to attract somebody to make a phone call. And then come time to play ball, and they just drop it, right? They don't answer the phone. They aren't responding. They're off. You know, they close at 5. Like it's all over the place. In fact, Gartner, who is this research company, did a survey a couple years back, and they found that 89% of companies are expecting to compete on customer experience alone, versus like 36% 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So the differentiator really is the customer experience. It's not the services that you provide. It's how you provide them, how you treat the customer all along the way of your interaction with them. And it's definitely in home services. Some of the industries are super commoditized,
Mm-hmm.
and a painter is a painter is a painter. And so the difference that a brand makes is how they treat or what the experience is like for the customer all the way through. To go back to your question, though, one of the things that we've done to enable or help decision makers at the various brands, especially in franchising, where you have tons of locations, independent operators, and you're trying to have a McDonald's like experience where they walk into the store and it's the same, and the menu's the same, and all of that. We call it answer audit or speed test, but basically we'll go through and we'll call every single phone number, marketing phone number in the entire system. And so that we can capture what is the answer rate. The basic first tenet of customer experience is answering that phone.
Yep.
Majority of the transactions are still happening on the phone. So making sure that you answer the phone. We'll go through and we'll call every single line. We typically set it up where we'll call 9 times over 3 days, or over 9 days, space it out, whatever the brand wants to do. And it's surprising how, even in today, 2023, how poor some brands' franchisees' answer rates are. It does depend on the industry and the culture within the brand, but on average, we're seeing 55 to 65% of those calls are answered with a live person.
That
And
really is, that's insane.
it is.
Almost half of the time that a customer calls to get an estimate or get price or learn the service, almost half the time the phone goes to voicemail.
Yeah.
If there's a voicemail, and I'd actually like to get an idea what those voicemails sounded like, or is it standardized? Is what being said in the voicemail even the same every time? Or do you have, Mr. Franchise owner, hey, Jerry's here, talk to you soon, bye. Or not even a voicemail present, it's the automated attendant from T-Mobile or Verizon that does it for you. Talk about a completely different experience.
Yeah.
It is not consistent in any way. It is completely variable. How your customer experiences your home service brand is completely variable, which is it's mind blowing. We let this even happen. I hope that anyone that hears this, if you are a brand president or a founder of a home service company, I hope the first thing you do after this call is you go ahead and do your own answer audit, speed test, call all your franchisees, record how every call went, and get their voicemails. How did those sound? Because this is how your customers are interacting with your brand. So now I went. Go ahead, Ben.
I was going to say, even so, it's funny because just to kind of bury this point a little bit further, even the top performing brands will average around 75% answer rate, and that's considered good as we've done all of these various answer audits, and that's after even notifying them that the call is coming. We don't. Some brands have chosen to do that, and then also what the number is that they're calling. So, like, we've set them up to succeed, and still, at best, they're missing a quarter of the calls. So it's absolutely still a challenge in the industry.
Yeah, I'd love to spend some time on this because I think there is this mindset, and I think in home services, and I'll say that I had this. I was at fault with this for years. That homeowners would only call. I mean, that's how everyone's scheduled, right? And I'd love for you to talk about how customer experiences have changed. You mentioned this earlier, the fact that ProNexis does texting, it does online scheduling, it does chat, it does phone calls, kind of your standard stuff. But there's been a movement in general of consumers away from, and you called it touchless. Talk to us more about that. Like, what percentage, do you have any numbers on this? What percentage of people are texting instead of calling, or scheduling instead of calling in? Like, what does that look like? And do you think this can continue? Will it become more and more touchless over time? Do we have to make it so it's less and less friction is involved in scheduling or working with a brand in home services?
Scott, these are great questions. I asked for softballs and you gave me some softballs. Absolutely. Answering the last question first, it absolutely is going to continue to shift, right? You and I are consumers. The audience is consumers. We all don't want to have to take up more time talking to somebody on the phone. If we can self-serve, go online, do it through text or chat, or even just instantly through automation, that's where it's going. The shift has continued almost at an accelerated rate, and it will continue, as in my judgment, based on deploying AI and actually making those non-agent experiences, the chat, text, those sort of things, even more capable and seamless. I don't have any data like what the total split is right now. I have a lot of data on texting as a whole, and online booking and chat, and we'll go through that. But it's absolutely shifting, and it's doing it quickly, right? And there's a lot of companies that are coming up with solutions, and so it's really a great point to go and do some discovery, find some partners that you can plug into your system that can enable that touchless experience. That's what we're doing.
So when you, it gives a sense of how, I mean, I understand texting and how it works, right? And I can understand consumers wanting to engage with the brand through text. In fact, I would actually say intuitively, most homeowners would expect a contractor to respond from a text faster than a call, just because they know that it's something they can just handle when they can handle it. They don't, if they call in, you have to be available that instant, but a text, they could be on a call doing estimates. They might think that texting is an easier way. I was a skeptic, frankly, that consumers would even want to go online to my website and schedule, because I don't know if they would believe it would work. Because they would think, well, does a contractor really know how to set up their schedule in a way that it actually works? I know we even had instances where people have booked online and they call in afterwards and they're like, did it work? Like, am I scheduled? Are you really going to come out at 11:30 on Friday or Thursday? But I think people's trust in general in brands being able to deliver that on that experience is going up. So, but do you have any kind of expectations that you could provide home service brands around what percentage of people are buying online or scheduling online versus calling in to set appointments?
Sure. Yeah. But I think it's shifted from um, a trust that they can deliver to an expectation that they will provide those options today. Like that's, you've been in the industry almost 20 years now, since you founded Five Star Painting, if I get my dates right. And, the consumer experience has changed drastically in those 20 years. I think, there was rotary phones and yellow pages back then when you got started.
Satellite phones. Yeah.
Satellite phones. Yeah. And today it's coming at you from all different angles. Consumers are interacting with your brand from all different angles. And so the expectation is that you absolutely will play ball and be there and be available and be ready to meet the consumer where they want to interact with you. So texting, absolutely. It's like, me personally, I love the text. I love to text them because in my busy schedule, I can send the text and I know they'll get back to me, or I expect they will. And then it's almost like email. It's managing your inbox. They're going to hit you back as soon as they can. And I don't have to think about it anymore. So that's my preference versus having to sit down and call somebody and go through the whole spiel for 15, 20 minutes. What was your question though? Remind me again.
What can a home service brand expect? Like, what do you have a percentage? Do you know what percentage of people are booking online versus calling in, for example? Or when you look at the aggregate appointments that ProNexis is setting for some brands, are you seeing 20% of people are booking online, 30% of people are booking online versus a couple points? How significant is this, or could it be?
Yeah, so we of course manage quite a few brands with their online booking, and it's all integrated to the calendar that the same agents are booking on, or chat or text. And brands that have done it well, that have promoted it on their website, can see upwards of 50% of all of their appointments be booked online. A touchless, totally touchless experience. And in the industries where, it is an in-home assessment, an in-home appointment that has to take place, where there's not the talking about price or buying, that's where they're seeing a tremendous amount of the percentage of the total appointments being done online. Some of the other industries, who are just getting into this, they'll see around 10, 15%. So it's a huge demand by the consumer to have that as an option. In fact, just kind of segue into chat. I was doing some research, trying to gather some data last night, and I had logged into our chat tool to pull some reporting, and I was logged in as an agent, and blink, up comes this chat, and I fortunately was not the only agent on, and I watched for 12 minutes this interaction, and it was for our mosquito company, Mosquito Shield, and I watched the agent go through and sell the consumer right there. It was actually really great. You know what?
What time was that?
It was at 8:30, 8:40 at night.
Wow.
And if I don't know where the lead was, where the consumer lived, but if it was in the East Coast, that's a 10:30 at night call.
Wow.
And it was actually really cool to watch.
I mean, I just look at how much money our franchisees are spending to make that phone ring, to make that interaction happen. And if we aren't there to meet them where they want to be met at the time of the day, and how do we lose the sale? Do we lose the customer? How valuable is that customer to your franchisee? How valuable is that customer to you as a franchisor? What does that mean in terms of, how they're reviewing the brand and how they're talking to other people? What happens when that person goes home and tells their cousin, Vinny, that they booked it all online? It was seamless as everything, and it all just worked like it should, like magic. And we have this opportunity to create magical experiences, and they're magical because anywhere else they don't get that. When they go and get their other chuck in the truck guy to come and do something for them, they don't get that experience, right? And so I love hearing that anecdotal experience you just gave us, because it's what I want to have happen for every one of my brands at every level for every customer. Let's
well, one thing to add on to that is you're absolutely right. It can have a tremendous impact for the good for the brand, but the watch out is for really, I think it's applicable for all of these various communication methods that you can deploy, and you should and you need to for today's consumer. But chat specifically, Forrester's did some research on this and found that like 1 in 5 consumers, if they do not get responses on chat or text, will not work with that brand again. So it's an expectation from the consumer that you are there, available, and ready to go. But if you screw it up, it has detrimental. So you really have to approach it in the right way. And
if you're going to do it,
you're
going to do it, you better do it right. And I actually can, when you just said that, I don't know how many times I've gone onto a chat and was faced with a bot that I had to go through like 15 layers to finally get a human being. And then I get connected to somebody in some other country. And it's like, I'm so frustrated with this brand. I don't want to work with them anymore, because you've taken my time and it's 15 minutes and I don't get anywhere. And so I know that we are very careful at ProNexis and at 5-Star Brands to make sure that, people have what they want when they want it. With that, the challenge, right, that a lot of brands must have is, and if you wouldn't mind sharing for us around the demand planning side, like how do we predict when calls come in? Is there like a human nature element of this, and they just always kind of follow a certain flow, and there's always a certain times of day that people are available, and that's just the way it is, and therefore you're able to match your supply or your agents on chat or text or phone with that demand at scale? Like how does ProNexis do that, and like what trends should we be thinking about that happen in this industry?
Yeah, scale matters absolutely when it comes to call center. Economies of scale is a real thing for call center. It's challenging to do when you're having a small little shop of 3 to 4 agents. It's impossible to do, to cover a full week, and let alone provide 24/7. With the spike that occurs, right? I think everyone's pretty aware of home services, for the most part, follows the same spike on Monday morning and then it declines throughout the day, and come 4 or 5, you're down to a lower level of call activity and contact activity. And then Tuesday, same thing, but maybe not as high as Monday and Wednesday. The rest of the week, it just kind of declines. That's incredibly difficult to staff for if you don't have size and you don't have data to help you make that decision. We did some analysis with over 1 million calls and looking at how do we, continue to optimize, how do we learn from that, both from a staffing for the inbound demand, the inbound calls, the inbound communication, but also the outbound component, which is becoming even more important, right? As in the last 5-6 months, I've watched the data from a call volume standpoint. Call volume is actually up, but it's up on outbounds. Inbound call volume has declined slightly in the last 5 months over prior period, over prior year. But outbound, people are leveraging Home Advisor, Thumbtack, those lead aggregators that you then have to outbound call, outbound reach out to. And so to be able to plan for all of that requires a lot of data and then a large team. So, we use, we have expertise in the space. We have two really senior guys that have been in the call center industry for a long time. Between the two of them, they have over 60 years of experience. Shout out to Ray and Doug. And they do a tremendous job of taking that experience and making sure that we're hitting those key KPIs, key performance indicators for managing the call center. But it is a skill. It's not something that, in my judgment, it's not something that you just can plug in and let it go. You really have to have the right skill, the right people that know how to, and know the industry as well, to be able to prepare for that demand, have staffing in order, have the right people there to respond to it.
So I think there's what I heard you say, Ben, is if I'm a small brand and I wanted to own part of my customer experience, staffing Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays are more important than Thursdays and Fridays. There are ways of effectively managing that overflow with an outsourced partner. And so I think let's just talk about how many calls are actually coming after hours for brands. So after 5 o'clock, the day's done, right? And that's challenging because for some of these brands, if you have a national footprint, you're coast to coast, you've got 3 hours of time difference you got to manage for. And so your staff might start at 9 a.m. Eastern time. Well, that's 7 a.m. You're in Mountain Time, and that means you're done at 5 p.m. Eastern, but you're done at 3 p.m. Mountain. So the end of the day here changes depending on what franchisees getting the call. But if you wouldn't mind just kind of speaking to how many calls are coming in after hours, are those calls even business related? Are they customer service related? Give us any kind of details you've seen on that in that category.
Yeah. So depending on the industry and the brand, 10 to 25% of the calls are coming in after hours.
Wow.
And it's typically a higher converting call. These are people that are looking to actually book because for various reasons. They're not doing as many of your normal customer care type calls, current customers calling in about things. These are people looking to book. And so, and then interestingly on chat, Saturdays and Sundays actually have twice the conversion rate as middle of the week. There's a little bit less chat volume, right? There's not as many consumers interacting, but they are far more ready to buy and book and get down the process, get further down the process with you if you are there to respond to it. So time of day, having 24/7, you're leaving money on the table if you can't staff and cover for 24/7 in today's economy. It's still a sizable percentage of the business.
That's it's really interesting. I think it's a little bit intuitive. Again, if you think about it, all the telemarketers are calling you they've got a job 9 to 5. They're calling you 9 to 5. So that I don't know if this is true, but at one point roughly 80% of all the calls that I was looking at the call center years ago. About 80% of all the calls that were coming through were not actually opportunities to do business. 80% of the phone calls were existing customers calling to ask about something, or a telemarketer or someone trying to sell you advertising or something else. But I could see how if someone's calling you at 6 o'clock and it's a customer, they're ready to buy something, to get something now. They came back from work and they got to get their lawn taken care of, or they see the paint peeling, or their toilet flooded, or whatever it might be, and they're calling now, and you don't have that same noise that comes from all the other telemarketers and stuff like that. So I could see that happening. Let's get into the outbound stuff. I know there's been a lot of emphasis in data around speed to lead, and there's been a lot of research on this as well. And I know that Thumbtack did some work on this as well. I'd like for you to spend some time on both of these for a minute. Share with us what you found out and what Thumbtack has shown around how important it is to be responsive in the in-app solution. Like if you're just in Thumbtack and a consumer is interacting with a contractor, how response time impacts buying behavior, right, with Thumbtack. But obviously Home Advisor, which is, the largest part of, we'd call marketplace partners, right? Because they have Angie's List and they have Craft Jack and they've got Home Advisor all on the same platform. They're the bulk of the leads in our industry. How important is it to get back to those leads quickly? And what kind of research have you seen? And are we seeing that at ProNexis? Is that actually true?
Yeah, so I think everybody has heard a lot of data over the years around speed to lead. I know Harvard did a big study. I don't even actually know how long ago it was, but they found that if you are reaching out to somebody within the first hour, you have a 7 times higher probability of booking them or closing that deal versus waiting after an hour. So that first hour matters. We've seen similar data in the home services industry. It absolutely is important. 1 to 15 minutes, you're going to have a significant improvement. So I do have some data on this. So Thumbtack, we work closely with Thumbtack, have for quite a while. In fact, we helped their dev team. I have a photo of it in our offices, but create their first integration for handling leads, right? Outsource partner handling leads. We were the first ones to integrate with them for that. And we had a celebratory meeting with their developers and it going live and all of that.
Oh, cool.
But what they found is that if you respond 1 to 15 minutes, you have a 61% contact rate. And if you wait another 15 minutes, so 15 to 30 minutes, it drops by 7% or 6%, 55% contact rate. And if you go out to like 12 to 24 hours, you have a 38% contact rate. Waiting past that, it's like single digits, 9%, right? So you're paying for these leads. And if you're not responding to them quickly, your ROI is in the toilet. It almost makes it not viable. I know even in working with Thumbtacks, even in some of their SLAs, like they know that speed to lead is so important, and they also have an image to portray to their consumer, and so
Right.
they want partners and need partners, and contractually will require partners to respond within certain SLAs.
That's a really good point. From their perspective, they want to work with contractors that actually give their customer what they want.
Yeah.
I can see that. That's why they're probably measuring it and why they're looking at it so closely. Yeah, I can see that.
And they're no different than like you said, Home Advisor, Craft Jack, all of those other lead aggregators that their brand is also tied to your performance. And speed to lead is a foundational point that is going to carry through whatever the consumer interaction looks like. You have to be quick to respond. As far as calls, we still have a large percentage of our interactions are via call. A lot of the appointments are still via call, over 50%, and across the entire call center. what we found is, so we have I'll kind of step back and explain ProNexis's outbound cadence. So we believe in kind of three things that we want to approach the marketplace with. We want to have speed to lead. That's a foundational principle. We also want to have consistent follow up. So we want it to be systematic, and we want to touch them a lot of times, and we want to have multi-channel communication. We want to meet them where they are. So our cadence is a lead comes in, and immediately the system is queuing up a call for that agent, and then it calls the consumer. And that's based on the availability of the agent. So we try to keep that under 5 minutes on average, speed to lead on calls. But the system also queues up a text message and an email to go out to that lead immediately. So that's not dependent on an agent. That first text goes right out to them asking, hey, thanks, we got your information. Is this a better way to contact you, or would you prefer to text with us, right? And so speed to lead's key. If they respond to us, right, the whole chain stops, and the agent then takes them through that. So if they respond to a text, it's a live agent. They're texting with them. They respond to the email, that team is supporting them. And of course, if they answer the call, that agent is walking them through the call flow, getting all the information we need, booking the appointment, making the sale, whatever the action needs to be. But if they do not respond, then the cadence goes through additional calls, additional texts, additional emails. And so over the course of 5 days, we'll reach out to that lead 11 different times.
Wow.
So that's the follow-up cadence that's the standard when we go to a brand that's coming on to us. It's of course customized and tweaked according to the brand and the needs and the data, the insights that we get, but that's our starting point. So some data from that though. So calls 1 through 3. Call 1 happens immediately. 2 happens on most programs, happens 15 minutes later, and then call 3 happens an hour later. So those first 3 calls have happened within an hour of somebody raising their hand and saying, I'm interested in your service. Tell me more. 71% of those of the calls, but 91% of the conversions. Of all our calls, 71% are 1, 2, or 3.
Yep.
But they account for 91% of all the conversions. So
that first hour is critical.
It's critical, right? It's critical. But if you neglect the rest, right, we're in the business of incremental wins, right? Incremental gains. And so if you neglect the rest, that's where you're losing. Calls 4 through 7 account for the other 29% of the call volume for the outbound calls, but they're an additional 9% of the conversions. Calls 6 accounts for 1.3% of the conversions, and call 7 is for the same, right? It goes back to the answer audit that we started the conversation with. Brands, franchisees, they're busy. They're running and gunning. Even if they have a staff, that team is busy. They're taking bathroom breaks. They're forgetting to do things, right? It's so challenging and costly to actually work a lead the way it needs to be worked. Along with the speed to lead data, I think a lot of us have seen the data around how many contact points it takes before you can make a sale. That I've heard multiple numbers, 7 to 11, but it's a high amount. So in order to squeeze as much juice out of these leads as you can, you really have to be consistent. You have to touch them a lot. You have to follow up with them. And the data supports that we have.
Super, super valuable and helpful. Let's I know that ProNexis has done a lot of work around optimizing around the best time to call. Does call time matter? Have you found that there's a certain time of the day or a certain time of the hour that actually has the best results? And like, what have our analysts told us in this area?
I remember when I think we did some analysis on this 3 years ago. It's just before COVID. And I remember being surprised, but then how obvious it was. So we did a big analysis of just under 1 million calls. So fairly large data set. And what we found, we wanted to identify what was the best time of day to call outbound. What was the best? That was like the premise, the starting question, and then how do we optimize to account for that? What we found is that there is a peak time of outbound calling that leads to conversion, and that's between 1:15 in the afternoon and 4:30 p.m. local time. So wherever that is local, that's the peak time. This is for outbound calls again, right?
Yep.
Not inbound calls. Inbound calls kind of peak earlier than that. But one obvious takeaway now that the data showed us this is that the best call time is actually between the 15-minute mark of the hour and the 45-minute mark of the hour, right? And I think it makes sense, having looked at it, like people kind of work their day on the hour, right? I'm going to start dinner at 6. I'm going to have a meeting starting at 2, right? And so they have that crunch time right before whatever it is starting, and then they're tied up. We found that between the 15 and the 45-minute mark, you have a much higher percentage contact rate versus the on the hour calls. Now it's challenging to do that at scale, right? You do have to do a lot of programming and staffing to account, but that's some, I think, really interesting data if you have the flexibility with outbound calling to stack it in those hours.
That's cool. I just love getting anything that data can tell us. I think is always super valuable. Little insights that we can mine out of that wide data array we have. I know ProNexis has done some work around what I would call win back or rehash, and I wanted to spend some time on this because I know that for home service brands, right now this idea of rehashing or trying to win back customers might be a little bit like, look, I'm in the middle of my busy season, right? It started in March and April. I'm slammed. I don't have capacity, but I know ProNexis has done some work as we tail off. So while the demand curve kind of falls off in November, right? Once the Christmas tree comes out and the turkey comes out, all the consumers kind of go away. And so I know we've done some work for, I think, Bath Solutions in particular, where we've, called any estimate that was not marked as one. We're calling them in November and December and January to try and give them a special offer and trying to win them back to do work. And we've got capacity. And for some brands, this can be really significant because we could be talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of estimates that have gone and been done. You've paid for the lead. You've paid to get the lead scheduled. You've driven to the home and you've done the estimate and you didn't win the job. And I know that we've done some research around this. And I don't know if you have it in this handy, Ben, but I know we did some research on this around, what percentage of the jobs that we didn't win went to another contractor. We asked the question, did you hire someone else? Did you do it yourself? Or did you put it off? And it was like a third. Roughly a third of people hired someone else because of price or whatever else. A third did themselves because they just thought it would be too expensive. But then a third just didn't do anything. It's just sitting there waiting to get done.
Right.
What percentage of, when you've done those win-back programs, what have you seen in terms of, how many jobs we've won for our franchisees by just being persistent around the estimates they've already done?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to do win-back programs, right? We're in the business of incremental gains. Win-back is an incremental gain, right? So the win-back programs that we've done have converted 2 to 5% of those calls. So it's not massive, but it is. You're targeting that third that has not done the work yet, has not gone with somebody else, of all of the estimates that you didn't close. And so getting an additional 2 to 5% of those is significant. It's typically, we'll run that program where we'll typically call 4 weeks after the estimate is given.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They've had time to marinate, and we'll pair it with a small discount to push them over the top. For a larger ticket sale, it does add up to significant dollars that people are leaving on the table by not having a program like that in place. And there's a lot of like your CRM can do a lot of nurturing campaigns and drip campaigns with those non-closed leads, but calling them on the phone, having a salesman there, able to talk them through it, put them back into the business, into the pipeline, is tremendous.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And yeah, and I want to encourage any home service brand that right, like these, as you mentioned, Ben, these are incremental wins. But I don't know a better way of adding value back to franchisees. Like when you think about it from a franchisee's perspective, they are paying us royalties, and in exchange for that, they get something. If we're not mastering our brand, and if our customer experience isn't great, we're not adding a lot of value back to the franchisee. If we are mastering that customer experience, we start to add value. If we are helping them convert more leads to appointments than they could on their own, we're adding value. If we're helping them win jobs that they've already estimated and it just showed up, like they didn't do anything, it just all happened on their behalf, you're bringing them revenue they would not have had otherwise. If you're, and we have other obligations to franchisees, which I want to get into, which is the next part of my questions I have here for you. Before I jump into these questions, though, for anyone who's tuning in live, feel free to throw into the chat for the next 15 minutes here any questions you may have for Ben or I, and we will make sure we get to those. But I think one of the other responsibilities we have as a home service brand is data. It's best practices. It's benchmarking. And what we haven't talked about is what benefit can ProNexis provide to home service brands around tracking the customer journey and helping the VPs of marketing, the CMOs, the brand presidents, the people who are running the brands with what's actually happening in the field. How does ProNexis help there?
So as we've, Scott, you and I have gone on this journey and have grown 5-star franchising, and I get involved with trying to improve that customer experience through the whole journey for the brands. The number one challenge that I'm seeing is there's a total breakdown from lead created on the marketing side to making it to the CRM to sale, right? And it's a breakdown in data flow. Franchisees don't enter in every single lead that comes in. They only enter in the leads that they closed or that they booked the appointment with. And so from a CMO standpoint, from a VP of marketing, or even your marketing partner standpoint, knowing what's working, what's not, optimizing the ads, optimizing your SEO, getting that insight, like it is a massive problem across the industry because, and that's frankly what a call center can, that's one thing it solves, is it enters in every single lead so that you have not just the sales, but you have the non-sales. And those sometimes are not as valuable, but they're very, very valuable when you're trying to improve and optimize the system. Some other things, it also, we've talked about this already, but consistency of message, consistency of the way that you portray the brand to the consumer, right? If you're following a script and the agent team is trained on that script, they're going to deliver it the same way every single time, as well as voicemails and every interaction with that brand. It's going to be systematic. It's going to be consistent, or far more consistent than it will be outside of that. But really the number one, like call recordings, transparency to the system, real-time access to what's going on location by location by location, as well as roll up, the entire system. All of those things I think are table stakes, and you absolutely need that. But making sure that you have the consumer data flow all the way to the end is a problem, and it's challenging unless you are using a call center. We have done a lot of work in 5-star to deploy business intelligence so that we can see and show the franchisee what's working, what's not, from a marketing standpoint, all the way down to sale. And the brands that have that locked up, that are using a systematic call center all the way through, they can show that. If they don't, it's a hard break at the call center, and then you're relying on, AI with recordings to determine if they were a lead or not, but you're still not getting 100% of everything that's coming in, and it leaves you way behind, or unable to show what's working and what's not, truly tied all the way to revenue from a marketing
So I
standpoint.
think this is also presuming that, and I think it's important to note, ProNexis, you guys integrate each time with the field software that brand is using. And I think that's a really important thing to just understand, that I think that's critical. Like, you got to be able to put the information in a place that people are playing.
Mm-hmm.
However the franchisee is running their business, you need that data to enter their system so they can see that real time in their system, which is something that through integration, ProNexis is able to achieve. I think the challenge with like an answering system, or, a traditional answering system that's an overflow, is a call comes in, they just take a message and they email you the message to the franchisee. That stays out of the system. So all these voicemails are being sent to a franchisee, and you have no visibility as a franchisor into how many of these are happening. Are they getting back to them? There's no breadcrumb trail.
Right.
But for every customer that you have that interacts with your brand, you want to have a breadcrumb trail of, okay, they called in, we answered, we called them back, we followed up with them here, here's the estimate, here's a win back call. And that whole breadcrumb trail should be available to the franchisee and to the franchisor. So I want to stress that is, in my view, a super important element to this entire business. You should be able to track a customer's journey in your system through the use of a ProNexis type partner and your field software. You mentioned it earlier in your prior comments. So I just want to bring it up now. And I'm sure a lot of people are thinking about it. How does AI impact our industry, and or does it even? Is ProNexis using AI? What do you think is going to happen with over the next 5-10 years with AI and our home service industry?
Yeah, it's all the rage right now. Chat GPT came onto the scene, or at least into the public domain, and how quickly it's taken the zeitgeist and everybody's focused on it. It absolutely is changing our business, right? I read some research that, I looked at it the opposite way, but 35% of the applications within AI will be around cost savings. And that's actually where I saw, the highest impact would be in cost savings. How do I reduce agent counts while still improving consumer experience? But the research, or, what they're showing is like 78%, 75% of the applications will be around revenue increases. And that doesn't add up to 100%. It's just what do people feel like the applications are going to do for their business. Within customer experience, I think it's both. It's absolutely going to impact the touchless experience and make it so that you can truly take care of a customer's needs, versus only as far as like your scripting can take you, right? I think we've all played with AI or chat bots that are programmed. Scott, you referenced one earlier where you're like trying to go through and it's cumbersome and it's annoying. AI, as if any of you have played with some of these tools, it's really fascinating how easy and smooth and capable it is. And as we get better and better at deploying that, and as the tools get better and better, that's going to change it. And that's going to happen in months, right? That's going to be happening by the end of 2023. We'll have AI running your chat, running text. We're going to be playing with all of that because it's available to us. The voice replacement, right? Having AI on voice, that's a little bit further off. That's probably 2024, somewhere in there. That's really challenging to do, to have a customer who can say anything talk to the robot and it tells them back, oh, great, that's great, let's get you scheduled. Oh, we can absolutely help you with that.
Yeah.
Walk them through that. But that's where we're going, and it's going to be available in the next year and a half. Is my assumption.
Wow, that's exciting. It's exciting. And especially if it means that our consumers, or the people who are buying our services, have a better experience, and they are ultimately get what they want, which is schedule an estimate or book the service, and making that, just as you mentioned earlier, frictionless.
One thing I do want to say on all of that, you talked about how we integrate with every company with the CRM, with the scheduling tool. That is more and more important as we deploy these other tools, right? They're only as capable as the access that they have. Being able to get into the scheduling for every single location, be able to book, be able to cancel an appointment, be able to change things, all of that is table stakes to enable these tools, and to enable like the full customer experience that we all want to provide to our customer. Whether it's AI or it's an agent, you got to have that integration. It's key. So start now, start integrating, start tying your system together, your customer journey together, so that you are in a position that you can deploy tools as they come onto market.
Ben, this has been awesome. Always fun when we're with Captain Fun.
Right.
Appreciate you coming with the numbers and bringing it with the data, and also just wealth of knowledge around customer experience. So thank you for doing that. Hopefully all of our listeners have enjoyed this as well. And we'll see you all next month on Thursday for our next Home Service Summit webinar. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Scott. See you guys.
Hey everyone, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and more importantly, that it brings some value in building your home services business. If you'd like to access more of this amazing content, like and subscribe below. If you'd like to be part of our live recordings and get involved with the speakers and myself, click the subscribe to calendar button or the link in the description to get updates to future events.